So good afternoon to everyone and welcome to today's virtual design review panel meeting. This is the third item on the agenda. I am Joe Bortoloni, host of this meeting, but panel member David Clusio will be the chair. In addition to the panel members, we have the applicant team, city staff, members of the public, and the media observing this meeting. Members of the public are welcome to observe the meeting only, please. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the DRP webpage. Just a reminder to please keep your microphones muted if you are not speaking. Thank you, and David, you can please begin the meeting.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Joe, can you please confirm that this meeting is being recorded
It is.
and that there are no agenda changes?
There are not, no.
And I'll take for silence that none of our panel members have a conflict of interest with this applicant. So this is the third item on the agenda today. Is the review of 55 Queenston Road. The lead planner on the file is Jennifer Allen. Good afternoon, Jennifer. You're ready for your presentation. Please keep the presentation under 10 minutes.
Thank you, David. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Allen. I'm a planner 2 on the urban team, and I am the planner assigned to the development review of 55 Queenston Road. So the proposed development is to construct a new 6-story mixed-use building containing 40 residential dwelling units and 176 square meters of ground floor commercial with frontage along Queenston Road. The proposed building will be Passive House certified, and 40 surface parking spaces, 12 long-term bicycle parking spaces, and 6 short-term bicycle parking spaces are being provided on site. And I will note that the applicant has made a submission for site plan control. That application has been deemed complete. We are just waiting for a development review team meeting date for that to be formally circulated. And so the subject property is located between Main Street East and Queenston Road, immediately east of the Queenston Road traffic circle. There are some low-rise commercial uses along Queenston Road and along Main Street East. And then there is a vacant property immediately east of the subject property, as well as there are many residential neighborhoods surrounding the property to the south, north, and east. So this is the view of the subject property looking north from the intersection of Queenston Road and Cochrane Road. This is the view of the subject property looking south from Main Street East. And this is the view of the subject property looking west. This is seen from the adjacent property. This is the view of the commercial buildings along Queenston Road. There, the low-rise commercial buildings. This is the commercial building along the north side of Main Street East. So that would be directly north of the subject property. And these are commercial buildings and 1 residential building on the south side of Main Street East, so located, I guess, northeast of the subject property. This is a view of the vacant property to the east of the subject lands. You can also see the residential uses further east. And then this is the view of the Queenston Road traffic circle seen from the subject property. And you can see some of the other commercial uses on Queenston Road and the surrounding area. Background. So this is the proposed concept plan submitted by the applicant. The mixed-use building will be along Queenston Road, and the surface parking area will be along the east property line. And then the area shown as the landscaped area currently will form phase 2 of the proposed development of the whole site. This is the ground floor plan of the proposed building, showing the residential uses along Queenston Road, and then some amenity and areas, general areas for the residential portion of the building. This is the north elevation of the proposed building, the east elevation, the south elevation, and the west elevation. And then this is the rendering of the proposed building, all submitted by the applicant. The subject lands are identified as a primary corridor on Schedule E of the Urban Hamilton Official Plan. And they are, the subject lands are designated as mixed use medium density on Schedule E1. So primary corridors shall link 2 or more nodes, major activity centers, or employment areas. They shall function as a vital part of the surrounding neighborhood and serve as a central focal point. They shall be the location for a range of higher density land uses along the corridor, including mixed uses where feasible and supported by higher order transit. The mixed-use medium-density designation shall promote the continuation of pedestrian-oriented mixed-use areas along traditional Main Street commercial areas located outside of the downtown. They shall evolve over time into compact, mixed-use people places where people can live, work, and shop. And residential development in the mixed-use medium-density designation enhances the function of these areas as transit-supportive nodes and corridors. Some of the urban design policies or the general policies would be respecting the existing character, development patterns, built form, and landscapes, promoting quality design consistent with the locale and surrounding environment, contributing to the character and ambiance of the community through appropriate design of streetscapes and amenity areas, and complementing existing massing patterns, rhythm, character, color, and surrounding context. So the subject property is zoned TOC 1 with special exception 461 and holding provision H54. So TOC 1 is for transit-oriented corridor mixed-use medium density, and it permits multiple dwellings and commercial uses. Through the special exception, a minimum building height of 7.5 meters is required, and a minimum building height of 8.5 meters is required for any portion of the building along a street line. The maximum building height is 30 meters. And then there is a minimum 0 meter building setback from the street line for the first 3 stories. And that special exception also kind of outlines other required building setbacks. So the specific areas of discussion for today would be, does the proposal represent compatible integration with the surrounding area in terms of use, scale, form, and character? Does the proposal complement and animate existing surroundings through building design and placement, as well as through placement of pedestrian amenities? And is the proposal massed to respect existing and planned street proportions? So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
We're ready for the applicant or the consultant to provide additional information. Please keep your presentation to 10 minutes.
Are we sharing our own screen for this?
You can.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Let's see what happens here.
We're seeing a page that says City of Hamilton Urban Design.
Yep. There we go. So I think Jennifer's covered off a lot of the context discussion that we had included in our submission. I guess if I was going to emphasize anything, I think I would say that it's an interesting site in that there's not a lot of context because of where it is, because of how the Queenston traffic circle sort of created a node out here, and how the former City Motor Hotel was demolished, and the building next to it also demolished. It's left a bit of a large gap in the urban fabric, and then also with the angle and the non sort of orthogonal street that doesn't seem to have sort of encouraged a sort of typical commercial corridor. We have a bit of a gap here in the urban fabric that I think this project, thinking of the phrases around the official plan and stitching together something where there's nothing, I think this is a good first step for the area, with LRT coming, of course, here too with the stop. I think that this is a great site to start to rebuild a bit of fabric here, linking what is a bit more complete as you move east and a bit more complete as you move west. And I think also with the 6 stories that is proposed, introducing a bit more height in this area that I think will, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we'll start to see grow out of the transit corridor that's going through here. So I am remiss in not introducing myself. My name is Graham McNally. I'm with Tom's McNally here with some other architects from Envisage, who's actually the prime consultant on this project. Our office is handling the site plan elements, which is why I'm speaking. But Emma, Holly, and Kyle are on the call as well from Envisage. So in terms of open space, there's some green space in the area of the project. There's a park, Parkdale Park to the east, that has an arena, and it's undergoing some redevelopment currently. There is, as much as it's maybe not Class A open space, there's the space underneath the hydro corridor, and then there's Montgomery Park further to the west that has some baseball fields and some play structure. So those are some neighborhood amenities. There's some bus stops, not a lot of bus in the neighborhood. And then to the north, there's a unseparated shared bike lane. The site, as we know from the photos that Jennifer was showing, there's not a lot going on the site, and the surrounding neighborhood is characterized with these 1.5-story homes. They're pretty prevalent out this direction. I don't know why my computer is lagging here, but anyways, again, the low rise around us. Main Street's a fairly wide street currently. We know that Queenston is quite a wide street as well. Do not know why this is not cooperating. Sorry, let's see if I can get this to work a little bit better. Just going to go through these quickly because I think we have a pretty good sense of what the surrounding neighborhood looks like. There is one tree on the site. Oh, that's an important photo. The site sits at the end of this sort of axis coming along. I guess this is Main Street. Now it aligns more with phase 2 of the project, but I think this is as the City Housing Hamilton thinks of what they're going to do as phase 2, I think this is an important axis. Our site is more around the corner from there, so you pass it more obliquely. So it's down this end. There's a tree on the site that we're hoping to save. The traffic circle, which is going to change with LRT. The car dealership. And so we reviewed the urban official plan policy, and I think that without reading it, I think hopefully you had a chance to read it in the past month, but I think the project achieves a lot of these goals in that we're providing a range of housing types, that we are trying to build a street wall, that we're trying to respond to the context in as much as, there isn't anything there, but I think where it could be going. And we're trying to make a building here that is going to provide some visual interest and sort of set a bar, I think, for this area in the city. This is an early diagram that we prepared as part of the design process, looking at how there's this axis that's created by Queenston as it comes in front of the site, and then how there's these sort of pressures in terms of constraining how big the building can be and which way it can go. And so where we were looking at for building this first building, so it's kind of this trapezoidal shape, and we sort of took that idea of the cars going past, the movement of that street, and that's what sort of generated the slippage of the two bars of the building. And then on the ground floor, we took a pretty rational approach in that we knew we needed street frontage onto Queenston, but we also knew we needed an access and we needed garbage onto the parking lot. So the ground floor shape kind of just is what we need to do to be able to get to the building from all the sides. And then above that is where we have the two residential bars that have that sort of slippage against each other. Being on the angle, there's some good things that happen with that, in that out the north side, or the notionally north side, we're going to get a view that's out towards the harbor and out towards the lake without being interfered with by what we imagine phase two. And it's because of all the low rise, that's going to be a pretty good view. Coming out the south end, we get to see the escarpment over top of all the houses, so that's pretty good. Again, the yellow here is trying to create a street wall and a bit of a street presence. That's a massing diagram to talk about the slippage and our perspective rendering. In terms of the site plan, I think one thing to note is there's a pretty large road widening on the site for Queenston to get wider. So that has set up sort of the distance from the existing sidewalk to the face of our building is quite large. We have shown it as a landscaped area with some new trees, because we think that would be creating good public space for the future of this neighborhood. And then there's a center driveway that facilitates the garbage collection, but our plan or our hope there is to do not like an asphalt paving, but maybe a decorative paving that highlights to vehicles that's a separate area, a bit more pedestrian focused. The units, so that's the landscape plan again, ground floor plan. In terms of units, there's a mix, 1 bedroom and 3 bedroom units. In the 2 residential bars, we have these little zones at the end of the corridor that provide a bit of relief, so that it's not just a corridor with closed ends on both sides, but it's actually the corridor has views out of the building. Slightly enlarged with the idea that there might be a bit of an opportunity for people to gather there, neighbors to talk to each other. And in terms of materials, the concept or the approach right now is brick on the ground level, and then a fiber cement panel system above in 2 different colors, so a gray and a white, and then the ends of these sort of slipped bars where they come to a point. We're proposing a composite aluminum material to bring some color, and that color that we would like to bring there is repeated, or the gradient changes over the facade with these sort of window shading elements on both sides of the building. The elevations are a bit hard to read because of all the angles, but and we prepared the street section just to show we're in, maybe not necessary at this point to talk about, but the setbacks that were proposed in the zoning, we're slightly not meeting them, just because they were proposing step back after the 3rd floor, and we are proposing a recessed ground floor, so it's a little bit different. But the idea here being that we're creating this sort of protected pedestrian zone against the building when the building steps out, and I think I don't think that's out of the realm of good design. I think it's just slightly different than what was proposed in the site-specific zoning. So that's our presentation, and look forward to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Marian. So for questions, I'll turn to Eldon first. Not seeing him on the session here, so maybe Jennifer Sison.
Thanks, David. So I have a couple of questions, and maybe I can start with the first one. Is the future phase 2 design going to be developed in concert with this development, and is that why you've provided additional parking and bike parking?
We would love to provide the design for phase 2, but the procurement hasn't worked out that way. So it's a future project that City Housing Hamilton, as I understand it, will bring forward.
Okay, and is the intent of the parking and bike parking to address that there will be a future phase 2?
So the 12 spaces are actually inside the building, and the 6 future parking are required outside. So there's no additional bike parking at this time. The 40 spaces, yes, are to address phase 2 as much as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. And for the roof deck that overlooks the courtyard, I was wondering what the design and intended use of that space is.
I mean, maybe Emma can speak to that a little bit, but I think, or Holly, but I think at this time, we see it as a sort of a community space, but of course it has to be balanced with maintenance and practicalities of the building owners. So I think at this point, I think we've landed on, I'm going to get this wrong, landed on a barbecue. There you go.
With
Thanks, Holly.
potential community gardens and some vegetation screening between the
Sorry, Holly, could you speak up?
barbecue area. Sorry.
Or I'm not catching everything you're saying.
Okay. It's meant to be used for sort of barbecuing purposes, a community gathering space, but there will also be some planter elements which would be used to sort of give some privacy to the units which are directly adjacent to the roof deck.
Thank you. And my last question was about the roadway that connects Queenston to the parking lot. You mentioned that was for garbage collection. Is that the only vehicles that'll be using that road?
That's a good question. I suspect that people will use it rather than backing out at times, but what's going to happen to this traffic circle as part of LRT is kind of an open question. So it's a little hard to predict, I think, exactly how it's going to integrate into whatever future road design happens.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Joe?
Thanks, David. Just on that, is the LRT proposed to go through this site in some way?
It goes in front. Of course, I don't have the drawing in front of me, but if you were to imagine, let me just share my screen again. If you were to imagine this kind of doing that, the LRT stop is kind of a long thing that, at least the previous design, I don't think it's been updated since the latest announcement, but it was kind of like directly in front.
That's part of the road widening.
I mean, from the drawings that we've seen, it doesn't look like they need the road widening for the LRT. But it is something that the city has identified on the site. So.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question. Do we know how much the road will be widened and how much of the generous public space will be left?
So we are we would like to take it to the city that we should be allowed to make this as nice a public space in terms of planting and greenery as we can, and let the future road widening, which may or may not happen, grow in some point in the future. I don't think we know exactly what the plan is. I don't know, maybe Shannon or Jennifer knows a bit more on that. I'm not sure.
I don't at this time have any more details about what the plan is for that, but it will be developed with the LRT as it progresses.
Okay, just one last question on phase 2. I understand it's not part of this scope or the applicant scope. But you had some sketches, some early sketches showing the massing of what phase 2 could be. Was that the maximum envelope permitted by the bylaws? Yes, this one. Thank you.
That is my recollection. Yes.
Okay.
There was when the site specific zoning was done, it was capped at, I want to say, 8 stories.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Iana.
Sorry, the unmute button again. I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Ted?
So a few questions. Again, this roadway and transit, I think it would be really helpful for us to assess this development with a better understanding of what's happening there in the future. And I suspect this is maybe not a question to the proponents, but back to the city. This development is anticipating future expansion of transit, and I think it maybe should be part of this presentation and this package for us to imagine what it'll be like in the future and how it's addressing the future condition. What can we, and I'd like to just get a kind of broader understanding of this entire development site. Who owns it? Who will be living in these spaces? How it will be operated? And what's the relationship between phase 1 and phase 2?
Sam, do you want to take that? Sam's with City Housing Hamilton, who owns the site. Rob? Maybe, I mean, in the absence of anybody else, the site's owned by, or you want to talk, Rob? You can take it.
I'll do my best. So as Graham noted, City Housing Hamilton is the owner of the lands. It is subsidized housing. It's 1 and 3 bedrooms with Graham or Holly step in and just give me the count on those that are barrier free and not.
I'd love to step in and give you that count, but it's not memorized. There's significant, there's more than the required number of barrier-free apartments that are being provided. And there's a total of 40 units, 15 of which are 3-bedroom to accommodate families.
Yeah, so it's a mixed use family and single unit dwellings. And sorry, what were the other questions? Because I've forgotten them.
The relationship between phase 1 and phase 2, does the city know whether that will be housing as well, or is it a community center? Is it school? Is it, commercial?
The intent is City Housing would fit out the phase 2 for housing as well, similar to this building. Okay, so the focus of amenity in the center could be multiplied by this future development to the north. Correct, and we've taken that as thought. Yeah. Okay, so because it starts to question this vehicular pathway through the center of the site. And I think understanding how phase 1 relates to phase 2, I think would help to assess what might be the best way to do that. Oh, here we go. Thank you very much.
So this was as of 2017, so this is very likely out of date, but it'll give you a sense of what the thinking was.
Sorry, can you identify where your site is in this?
Yeah, for sure. So our site is this sort of wedge back here. So the Queenston traffic circle is here. So
I see it's gone.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if I can draw on this thing.
I can sort of imagine now.
So
it's a pretty drastic
here's
consequence to your site.
Here's where we are, something like that.
It is a definite difference. When we were given the project, we were given the information the LRT was not going ahead, so it's new.
And is the LRT going ahead now?
Best guess right now is yes. The city is working on a memorandum of understanding with the province and the feds, and so that's the understanding. Yeah.
So I guess the question would be then, does that triangular shape become park space? Does it become another development site? How does that impact?
That is a good question because it's, I don't know who owns it. I guess the city owns it.
I can kind of answer that through the chair. It's Shannon Mackay. There's actually a lot of services that are located under that traffic circle, and the hydro corridor actually goes over top of it. So there's a lot of limitations to what can happen in that triangle that's created as a result of the loss of the traffic circle. So I don't see development occurring there, but like I said, there's a lot of challenges with the existing services that exist there.
And presumably, if that street is removed, then your access that you're currently showing would not have a street to access from.
Yeah, unless they build something to connect it through. But I mean, there's a lot of intersection right here.
Alternatively, if we could back the garbage truck up rather than having it need to pass through the site or have a hammerhead, which we do not have the space for, we could potentially eliminate the road.
I mean, I think, the hammerhead idea, that's one potential solution, is that the driveway becomes a hammerhead.
Perhaps we should move along with questions, and I'm just worried about time.
I'm finished. Thank you, David.
Oda.
Yes. Thank you for presentation. I just have a question out of curiosity that you called passive housing. Is it related to, is there any strategy or any feature of energy saving or sustainability in your design?
Emma's the passive house expert in this call.
Hi, sure, I can speak to that. So this building is one of actually a handful that's in City Housing's portfolio right now, which are being designed to the Passive House International standard. And that means that it's going to reduce the energy consumption by approximately 50% of a building that was built to code. And so we have energy modeling part of our team that are looking at all the thermal bridging through the envelope, and we have more insulation than you would see in a typical building, and triple glazed windows, which actually are very useful for this kind of high traffic area because they also help with sound. And it creates a very comfortable, livable environment. So we're thrilled that City Housing has decided to go this direction in creating buildings that are low carbon for our city.
Awesome. Just another question just related to that. So I guess the green roofs and stormwater management is part of that too. All the strategies that you have.
So stormwater management is part of what we do is through the site plan process. We actually don't have any green roofs on this project right now due to cost, but the main strategies are having to do with livable environments for tenants and energy efficiency.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dana?
No further questions.
Jennifer Mallard?
Thanks, David. I'm wondering if the percentage glazing in the envelope is maxed out. My concern is glazing in living room spaces from the units.
Currently, we're showing about 5 feet of window, which seems rather generous given the sizes in living room spaces. It's a little smaller in bedrooms. Mm-hmm. We are a little bit maxed out on glazing area right now in our energy budget, looking at what we can do to keep those glazed areas at the end of corridors to allow light into the shared space.
And is that curtain wall then at the end of the corridors, or is it looking like curtain wall, but it's more energy efficient? Is that still the triple glazed system?
We're currently looking into various triple glazed systems to provide the correct amount of resistance, thermal insulation.
Thank you. No questions more from me.
I don't have any questions, so I will turn it over to the panel members for comment and recommendations, starting with Elva, who I'm not sure is on the line. And so maybe we'll go right to Jennifer Sison.
Thanks, David. So I'm really happy to see that you're proposing a passive house certified development to fill in what is right now a vacant lot, and also that you've been considerate of how it's going to be a precedent for the area as it redevelops over time. I really think the amount of street trees you have and the amenity space you provided is good, both with the courtyard and the barbecue and community space on the roof deck, as you mentioned. Understanding that there's a future road widening, the connection between Queenston and the parking lot may not make sense, as we've kind of touched on. And at your southernmost corner of the site, it looks like there's no pedestrian connection to Queenston Road there. I think you might benefit from one, as people will likely cut through there anyways. If the area is going to be widened in the future, there may be an interim condition that you'd want to address for that. I'm also curious if you've kind of considered, you mentioned Montgomery Park, which is in the area. It already has some existing large playgrounds and a splash pad. I'm wondering if you've kind of considered that and the need to have a small playground in this area, and whether that's kind of the best and highest use you can give to that amenity space. And I would like to better understand the shadow and wind impacts on the courtyard and playground space that you proposed. That's going to have an influence on the microclimate throughout the year, and the use of the courtyard and the roof deck amenity spaces may depend on that and the comfort. So I would have liked to have maybe a bit more information about that to provide more comment. And right at the west side, the west face of the building, in your rendering, it looked like the amenity room there is a blank wall. And I understand that you're at your glazing limit, but I would recommend, just to help enliven the streetscape, that you explore the potential in that area to consider having more windows in the space, just so that you have more visibility to the street. I think that is all of my comments, and thank you very much for your presentation and for putting this together for us.
Jeremy.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jennifer and Graham, for the initial presentations. We've gotten so much information of, yes, this is going to happen, maybe this isn't going to happen. Phase 2, the LRT, it's hard to try to assess this based on which option to look at. So I think the best way to do it is to kind of obviously look at the option that the applicant has submitted. Graham, I agree with you. I think this property has kind of created, with the previous buildings going away, has created a void. And it's also, there's an opportunity for it to be an area for strong urban forms, which obviously you are starting to do. I think it's also a very difficult area, at least in its current condition, maybe not in the future, to really try to get strong pedestrian connectivity because of the circle, and also because of the low density along that strip. But I'll assume that this building, at least in its massing, will set some sort of precedent for this corridor, whatever direction it takes, and that there will be, taller buildings, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, and that this building will support and complement that. I think that the public space that you're proposing along the Queenston Road side, if that can be maintained, if there's some way to push for that, I think is very important to get pedestrians or keep pedestrians on that side. So I think, and I don't know, it seems that it's probably beyond your control. I'm a bit, and maybe again, this is related to phase 2, and I don't know if it really came out, but the road that is connecting to the parking lot from the traffic circle, I know you had spoken about it being for garbage pickup, for waste pickup, but couldn't the trucks come in from the main parking lot entrance?
Yeah, it's the backing out or turning around, so they can
Okay, so
back
they
up
can't
as
just
well.
come in. Got it. Okay. Does it have to be a through street though, or can this was the? I guess this had come up through the hammerhead, potential hammerhead condition.
Yeah. I think I'd have to check the notes, but they would prefer to drive forward only. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Only because there's I mean, I know the trucks only come once a week, but there could be a, you could set up a potential condition for public space or even, tenant space that for the phase 2 project. Overall, I think this is a very strong project. I understand how complicated it is both from an urban perspective and also architectural. So I commend you for your work, and I look forward to seeing this being built. Thank you.
Yana.
Oh, sorry, is it me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your presentation. I very much appreciate the environmental friendliness aspect of this proposal. Thank you very much for that. I agree with my colleagues what was said. I would only like to suggest that as this will be the only building of this height for quite some time maybe, and therefore very visible in this neighborhood, maybe more attention could be paid to the facades in terms of not just adding a color, but what kind of materials and patterns are you using? And one little comment on that corner element, that corridor end portion, it seems a little strange to me. It looks fine on the elevations, but the actual 3D-dimensional view on the renderings, it does not seem fitting the overall design of that build form very well. So I would like to suggest to design architecturally stronger and more interesting massing at this corner. Other than that, I don't have any strong concerns. Thank you.
Ted.
That me, Ted?
That's you, Ted, yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay, thanks. Look, I think this is, I really appreciate the ambitions that the city has for passive house design. I'd like to hear more about the sustainability on this project, the stormwater treatment, the approach. Can this roof anticipate PV to approach net zero as a building, as part of the policy for the city of Hamilton to achieve that? I think that's something that city buildings should be trying to be doing. I appreciate the capturing of space on the inside of the site, protecting it from the traffic, and certainly the opportunity for the two buildings, the phase 1 and 2, to work together to create some meaningful amenity space, public space on the inside of the site, I think is something that should really carefully be considered. And I think the city should allow phase 1 to think about how they can do that together, because I think that's the opportunity that these sites present. I think the diagram, the massing that's been presented, I think is really interesting. It's clear. There's a base and there's a couple of wedges on top that are floating, and it gives you the feeling of movement. So I commend you on that. I think it could be refined further to be more clear and more concise. And I'll give you some comments on that. In terms of urban design, this is the only place on this street, Queenston, where there's actually a crossing. And so you've got a neighborhood on the south, you've got a neighborhood on the north, and it's very difficult, just from Google Maps, to get between the two. And the east side of your site offers an opportunity to create a very clear through block connection and connecting right to the current crosswalk and to the south. And could that pathway be more public in nature? Could you wiggle things a little bit to make that a larger pathway that is a bit more of a promenade that's really connecting neighborhoods? You talked about stitching the fabric of the neighborhoods together. Also on that side, I think there's some septet issues. Can the amenity and the retail space have a little bit of glazing there, just so we're not creating an unsafe condition? Eyes on that area. In terms of the facade, I think we're seeing a series of punched windows, and I'm wondering if with this kind of movement and the dynamic of this area, that some of those windows could combine to become more horizontal, and maybe the color then becomes a bit more gradient and, you know, is a bit more playful. I think that the base as a black base would be more successful without color in the canopies, that were the black canopies. I think that signage could be low and discreet and been black or in the base, and really let the tops, the color, the idea of the color actually be expressed only in those top elements. I think it would be more successful. I also think, and possibly you could, you know, look at that. These stair towers, I think Jennifer was leading towards, hey, do you want to swap some of that glass in the stair towers for glass in people's, you know, home units? And I think you would get better performance. That stair towers, all this glass to the south, triple glazing, it's going to be a lot of heat in there. And I think those stair elements would be more successful if they were vertical in their expression versus this banding of horizontal, which kind of feels like it's fighting the kind of design composition. And I think that is it. Again, what is that roof amenity space? I think that needs to be expressed and used as something, either green roof or patio. And is there access from the second floor onto that, or is there a stair from below? But besides that, I think I'm excited about this project. I think it could really add a lot of character to the site, and it's a nice looking design. So thank you very much.
Yes, I appreciate the design and the general concept of the project. Also, I do agree with my colleagues' comments, especially about the concerns about the future development on the site and also widening of the road. This is the only thing that I could just echo that on that. And other than that, I don't have more comments. Thank you.
Dana?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Like the others, I agree with the comments that have been made today, and without wanting to reiterate them, I just want to say that I do appreciate the challenges and the complexity of doing mid-rise, especially a passive house design in an up-and-coming area, and I'm pleased that you're taking this on. I find the strength of this proposal is the amenity space between the two buildings, connecting both of those buildings with the amenity space on the roof deck, providing kind of an overview of that. So I encourage you to really look at that and how people can use that space for gathering and for coming together as neighbors. And I encourage you that when you do the second phase or the second building, that you also kind of ensure that that building integrates well with that amenity space and has amenity space as well, or gathering space that kind of that opens onto that area and that overlooks that area to provide a lot of visibility, but also opportunities for people to gather. Thank you.
Jennifer Mallard?
Yes, thanks. First of all, congratulations to the city and to Graham and Emma and Holly for producing a passive house design and the commitment to doing it. It's an important step for all of us as designers and urban planners to address climate change. And putting this on this site, because the site is marginal for private single residential, other kinds of use, I think it sort of maximizes the potential of this site and creates potential to the immediately adjacent sites. I do think that the landscape buffers on both facades that we see in the rendering are critical, because that tree buffer zone in front of bedroom windows is really important, given that it's going to be a high traffic. It's already a high traffic zone, and it will be with the LRT going in. I support the idea that there's no step back. Somebody mentioned earlier that the recommendations were step back as the building gets higher, but I think the massing is clean the way it is with the solid base and the the clean massing that doesn't step back as it goes up. Those are my only comments.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, just to wrap up, I guess I'm going to echo some of the other speakers. I think it's a commendable project. I think the city and the designers on the passive house, it's a great initiative. And I think for the most part, the massing is quite strong and the site approaches, there's some good underlying thinking there. I think our comments about that route through the site and how, if it can disappear, will obviously only improve that mid-block amenity outside area if the garage or the garbage truck doesn't have to go through there. I think the interesting part about the whole conversation, to be honest with you, is the LRT conversation that I cut off a little bit and what that means and what the change in context, particularly the possibility that the street on the west side might disappear, and what that will mean in terms of how you, I guess, solve your servicing, and also what that means in terms of even your entryway into the building that really faces that street rather than Queenston. You may want to reconsider the whole ground level relationship in light of that change, and I think it will, I guess, make an alternative strategy for the garage access, garbage truck access. And the only other comment I'd have to say is within your material palette. I mean, Ted talked about some of the underlying aesthetic strategies, which I agree with them. I think he was referring to those glass towers. I don't think they're stair towers. I think they're the end of the corridor, if I'm not mistaken. But the underlying point that maybe you could reduce glass and rearrange it and put it into the individual units, I think is something that's worthy of consideration. But the other thing is you have a material, fiber cement is one of the materials on the building. And I mean, there's certain things that end up being used on nonprofit housing. You end up being under a lot of struggle to make these projects work within the budget that you have. And I understand that is always a struggle. But there are a few materials there that I think in the long run just don't, I wonder if they're the best choice in terms of long-term durability, maintenance, and whatnot. And I'm just wondering if maybe you might want to consider something that doesn't sort of that has a better performance in those lights, and particularly white fiber cement over time in an environment where you have particulates in the air. Like it's not sure it's going to look that great in the long run. So that's recognizing that you guys are probably working every penny on this project, and so maybe I'm talking to the client here to open the wallet a little bit there, go with a little bit more substantial material. I mean, if this could be, like, if these buildings could be brick, the entire height, or I think that would be a more dignified and anyway, or I mean, there's other materials, but I'm just thinking you're getting into this the kind of nervous on that in the materials there. But otherwise, I think that everybody else has covered the comments, and I don't know if you have any questions for us. And I'm quite curious to know how this project will proceed given the LRT. Is this because I honestly believe that the ground plane and what happens if streets disappear and stuff like that, I think they could have a pretty significant impact on the ground floor, or the best way of developing the ground floor and the site, and that this project should, not trying to hold it up, but I think it should be able to consider this as part of the best resolution for the site. And it is a little bit frustrating to not understand the future site, the second phase. I think that in some ways that should, ideally these projects, and this is, I think I've seen some in the past have gone this way, where the city has a property, they only develop half, and the second part is kind of under conceived. I think there's value in pushing that portion at a master planning level in any case forward, so that this earlier stage can, be conceived in as supportive a manner as possible. Anyway, I was opening it up for questions, just to be clear. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Oh, sorry, is somebody about to?
Oh, I was just going to say I didn't have any questions, so I think I would appreciate everyone's feedback, though. I think there's some useful comments there, so definitely appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. And I guess with that, I'll adjourn it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.